So, teenagers, right? They're very interested in fitting in. We used to have this expression for it when we would take the teenagers to service camp. We call it wearing their cool jackets. You know, like they're strutting about, and you know, it almost works like armor for them. Because a cool jacket, you know, it keeps them at a distance from everything that's going on around. You know, you can kind of check out the lay of the land without looking like you're checking out the lay of the land. And it definitely keeps you from having to show all of that wacky, goofy stuff that is fully you, because you can hold it all in behind the armor of the cool jacket. And most importantly for what was going on there at service camp, it kept the teenagers from having to fully dive into that community that was being formed. From connecting with the people that they were meeting from all over the place, because you know what? You might find out that they're just as uncertain about fitting in and just as uncool and goofy and fantastic and wonderful as you are underneath that cool jacket. And most importantly, why we had to do the cool jacket skit was because we wanted the kids to be able to shed their cool jackets so that they could be open to the possibility that God might be at work there among their goofy, crazy, funky community that they were forming together in that week that they served. Now, I think we can all sort of relate to this idea of not really wanting to do too much to let people see who we really are. Trying to sort of just hang out under the radar until we're sure about it. In other words, I'm saying I think each and every one of us has a cool jacket. You want to see mine? Now, okay, I think we all have different cool jackets over our life, but this is my cool jacket from when I was in college.
Wow.
And
Very
it was the 80s, so you know, bat wings. Check out this padding. I talk about armor.
Oh my.
Right? And it has cool, even has cool embroidery on the pockets and a fabulous waist.
Sweet.
Very sweet, right? I'm gonna put it here if anyone else wants to try on my cool jacket at some point this morning. You are more than welcome. There you go, Lee. You're gonna have to show it off for the online congregation too so they can see it. It doesn't actually fit me anymore. There we go. So cool.
You haven't had 3 kids in 1985.
Right, exactly. So, that's my cool jacket. And you know what made it extra cool? A friend bought it for me, and we went to the motorcycle shop to get it. Not from the mall, but the motorcycle shop. So
Nice.
Serious cool jacket cred there. It's the real deal, or so we thought at the time. It gave me an edge, had this sense of plausible deniability that you didn't have to look inside of me and see everything of who I was. And in particular, I could keep my faith under wraps. Now, if you listen to our psalm, God's pretty much there with us in everything. God does not leave us be, and there's clearly no hiding from God. But do we act like it? Or are we all putting that armor of our jackets between us and God, and between us and the community of love and service and mercy that we are called to be here in the world? Now, Moses is literally running away. You may not remember this. How did he get to Midian? So I'm going to give you the backstory here. But Moses is running around away from Pharaoh, and I would argue that Moses is also running away from God See, Moses probably wasn't even sure who he was supposed to be cool for when he was a young man. I mean, he didn't know. Should I be wearing the cool jacket of the family that raised me? I mean, Pharaoh's household, that's a pretty cool jacket if you think about it. Or should I be wearing the cool jacket for the family that lovingly floated me off into the river in that basket so that I could survive the violence that was coming upon my generation when I was a baby and made sure that I would live no matter what? And I think he's kind of working through some of this stuff, but as teenagers are, they don't always figure it out very easily. Because I think he had been really secure in his Pharaoh's household cool jacket until one day he's walking around and he notices that the people of the Hebrews, who are his birth people, he knows that, are treated horribly by the household of Pharaoh. They are slaves. And I think he's probably seen it all along, but was able to just sort of hold it back behind the armor of the cool jacket. But he sees it finally one day, and he flips out. Teenagers, not always the most measured among us in their responses. And he ends up killing this Egyptian overlord in the process. And now he's really not sure where he fits in, which cool jacket he should be wearing. So he runs away from home. And he ends out in the middle of the desert. He has adventures. Time passes. He meets the house of Jethro, ends up marrying his daughter, becomes one of his herdsmen, and he's doing pretty good for himself. He has a son. He has a place. He has found a new cool jacket to wear, a place to just sort of keep his head low and get on with living his life. And he doesn't have to face what he did in his past and how that affects who he is and who God might be calling him to be. But then, I think quite inconveniently for Moses, God shows up, right, in a burning bush. Now, I am guessing that God has been around more subtly all along, checking in on Moses, and Moses has just been avoiding all the signs. He seems like he's pretty good at that, actually. But when you get faced with a burning bush that is not consuming itself, you just can't avoid looking at it. And you can see it in what's going on with Moses here, because he's like, I want to look, that is crazy, but I don't want to look, because he knows. And then God says his name, Moses. And I'm sure he's like, oh shoot, I can't hide anymore because God knows who I am right here. So there he is, kind of looking but not looking, but kind of facing the music there with God. And he comes closer, but he stays back. He keeps distance because he's worried that God is going to call him on what he's been doing. And he's not sure that he is ready to stand before God barefoot on holy ground. But he takes off, what I'm going to imagine were his cool sandals, and he does it. And he's like, okay, God, lay it on. Because he does know that he can't get out of this one. He can't hide. But God's interesting. God has a great way of working with us when we have been hiding from God and putting up walls between us and how God is calling us into our lives in the world. Because God does not say, you, Moses, you messed up, I'm calling you on it. And he's not about to let Moses hide out in Midian either, because he's going to send him back right into the middle of Egypt and say, okay, your people, it is your job to help get them out of there. Not alone, but that's what I'm going to do with you. Moses cannot hide out anymore, can he? But this is it. He's going to have to come out and he's going to be like, I'm here for my people. That's it. He is got to throw off his cool jacket and really do what he's being called to do. And we know that he does a good job. We know that he succeeds. There's lots of drama. We get all the cinematic moments, Red Sea parting and all those plagues. But here's what the Bible doesn't give us. It's all of the moments in between where Moses is trying to decide, do I do this or do I just keep hiding? I mean, how did he explain it to his family? Is he able to say to his wife and his son, I finally let myself listen to God and I've got to do this? Or does he hide it from them and just say, I'm going to go do this thing. I'll be back. Don't worry about me. And how tempted was Moses to just ignore the whole encounter? Step off of that holy ground and slip back into his cool sandals and go back to hiding with the sheep. You see, I think that the things that in the end separate us the most from God and the demands of our faith, it's really the little stuff. It's our need to fit in, to not make waves, and the fact that sometimes it's just easier to keep our heads down. Now, a lot of us have been reading the Screw Tape Letters. And C.S. Lewis, I love it. Has anyone read this week's installment yet? No. All right, well, you're going to love it. Because there's some good stuff about this very thing in this week's readings. Because C.S. Lewis is all about that little stuff that separates us from God. The ways that we hide from God without even admitting it to ourselves. Our cool jackets, right? Only Lewis was a professor in the 40s and 50s. And so the human being that he is subjecting to screw tape and wormwood's devilish tactics to turn him away from the enemy and to the side of their own father, our demon under, is a professor type person. And so he hides, not by going running away out in the wilderness. He hides underneath the veneer of being a part of the sophisticated and superficially intellectual set. The kind that's pretty much too cool to owing anything to anyone besides themselves, and instead using skepticism, and when it comes down to it, flippancy, as this great easy foil to avoid having any kind of messy entanglements with the inconveniences of the world and other people and all of those needs and challenges that are out there for us. Screw Tape has great advice for his little trainee demon Wormwood, his nephew. He says, actually, you know what, your guy that you're trying to tempt, it's great if he notices, in fact, all the ways that his cool friends are in contradiction with his faith, but he just doesn't do anything about it. He just keeps kind of going along with it anyway. Because that cognitive dissonance, which I like Lewis's word, he calls it dim uneasiness, but that dim uneasiness is actually better in the long run than those flashy big sins like murder and that kind of stuff, because those kinds of sins, we carry them as deep weights and people are more likely to repent. But all this little stuff, it's easy to say, I don't have anything to repent of. I'm just fine, God. And then he says something that I think is pretty profound. He says, humans are great at turning into the thing that we are pretending to be. Humans are great at turning into the thing we are pretending to be. In other words, if you spend too much time in the cool jacket, you just might become that person and lose track of who you are and who God is calling you to be. And I kind of agree. We aren't great at repenting of all of that small stuff, or even admitting that we have things to admit to and try to turn around from. Because God forbid us, we should be seen as who we are before God and each other. Thank goodness God sees all of us anyway, and loves all of us anyway, and continues to call us home to God and to our communities of love and mercy and compassion over and over and over again. There's no real hiding from God, is there? Now, I think Jesus is talking about the same thing in this gospel. It's pretty weird to our ears because none of us are, beginning of the first millennium Jews whose devotion to God is practiced through temple sacrifice. So none of that really makes sense to us. So you gotta kind of have to step back and look at the longer passage that Jesus has been doing, because when he starts this whole teaching, he gives a whole bunch of examples of ways that these small things actually get between us and God. Like, for example, there's the story of the rich fool, who, I don't know if you remember this one, it's a good one, very straightforward. This rich fool, he plants crops and he ends up with this massive harvest. And instead of saying, I have more than I need, I will share with all the people around me, he tears down his barns and he just builds bigger barns. And thus he keeps going. And where does he find himself at the end of his life? Alone and with no one to pass any of that on to, right? He's never really formed community. He's never really let anyone love him, much less let God love him. And then there's some other good ones in there, like, don't think you can wait until the last minute because you don't know when that's going to come. Be ready. Continue to listen for God's voice so that you can meet the call when it comes to you. Keep your lamps lit, right? Good one. And then finally, I think this one is very pragmatic. Don't waste your time fighting grievances that you have perceived against you until you have taken time to reconcile with the little things that you might have done wrong in your life. Don't get all wrapped up in all those grievances about everybody else until you've gone off and asked forgiveness for the little things that you have done. I think that says a lot for us today, doesn't it? Because today's adult cool jackets, I don't think they're that different. I don't think they're that different at all, because we do it all the time. I think we hide our faith, our Christianity, because we are embarrassed. We're embarrassed by some of the ways that Christianity is being practiced out there. We do not want to be associated with that. But you know what? Hiding our Christianity could also kind of make it easier for us, because it puts you in the fire line, I think, sometimes. And we might be called to act on that faith. And it's so much easier to sit around exchanging ironic memes about everything that's going on around us on social media than actually engaging in genuine, difficult, and life-changing connections and relationships and service and love and mercy and compassion to all the people around us. And it's especially easy to say, I'm not the problem. Am I? I'm not the one that needs to repent. It's all of those people. So I think Jesus is saying, I'm giving you a chance. I'm going to turn the soil here under the fruit tree, and I'm going to invite you to, take your sandals off. I'm pushing together all those metaphors, and realize that you are standing on holy ground. God is here with you in this. So focus on reconciliation. Focus on not on fitting in, but on standing out with your generosity. And most importantly, focus on hearing my voice calling you, says God, so that you can serve and love and be a part of all this. So I had kind of two poems that floated through my head that I felt like really fit with this. But I don't want to do both, so I thought I'd give you a choice. John Donne or George Herbert. I'm sure you've heard both of these before, so they're not new. Anyone have a preference? John Donne or George Herbert? I think he's smiling.
I like both.
You like them both. Nobody has a preference?
Done.
Done. All right, we got done. Here we go. Batter my heart, three-person God, for you as yet but knock. Breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me and bend. Your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an usurped town to another due, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason your viceroy in me should defend, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. Yet, dearly, I love you, and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie, or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you, enthrall me. Never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me.